investigation into the death of Coral Springs Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen continued today, with her husband officially arrested in her and facing a judge. Local 10's Terrell Forney is live in Fort Lauderdale with new details in this case. Terrell?
And Nicole, among those shocking allegations, police allege that this man killed his wife, the vice mayor, and slept in the same home in the overnight hours. He is now under arrest and being held here at the Broward County Jail without bond. Crime scene detectives were spotted still working the Coral Springs home where Vice Mayor Nancy Metayer Bowen was killed, and police say it was all at the hands of her own husband, Stephen Bowen.
Mr. Bowen, good morning, sir.
The 40-year-old appeared before a judge today on charges of premeditated and tampering with physical evidence. An arrest report says cops performing a welfare check at the home found Nancy's body wrapped in blankets and black garbage bags in the bed of the second-floor master bedroom.
Is he grieving or guilty? The husband of the vice mayor of Coral Springs now facing charges of premeditated, and that's not all.
Mr. Bowen, good morning, sir. You're charged with 1 count first-degree premeditated. You're also charged with 1 count tampering with or fabricating physical evidence.
55 seconds. That's how long the bond hearing lasted this morning for Stephen Bowen. Standing silent, his lawyer does the talking.
Investigators believe that Bowen also visited this home in Lauderdale Lakes after the to drop off a rifle to an unsuspecting uncle and to allegedly make a startling admission. Bowen explained that he shot Nancy 3 times with a the previous night and then slept downstairs, and that Nancy was rolled up in a comforter with a garbage bag around her feet. When asked why, Stephen Bowen said that he couldn't take it anymore.
5 words. That is all Stephen Bowen gave his Uncle Owen Small when Small asked him why. He couldn't take it anymore. The arrest affidavit documents it. The uncle confirmed it. The public record contains it. And every single news outlet that has covered this case has reported those 5 words and then moved on.
Okay, my nephew, her husband, came to my house this morning and told me that he did something to her.
Okay, her
husband? Is he alive? He said no.
Her husband?
Yes.
To the charges, the bond denial, the vigil, the political tributes, nobody has stopped to ask the question those 5 words demand. Couldn't take what anymore, because here is what we know about the specific week that ended with Nancy Metayer Bowen losing her life in the second-floor bedroom of her home in Coral Springs. Nancy was about to announce her run for Congress.
Hi, my name is Nancy Metayer Bowen, and I am the Vice Mayor of the City of Coral Springs. I ran for office because I believe representation matters. Our communities deserve leaders who reflect their lived experiences and who will fight to make government more accountable, transparent, and fair. For me, good governance means putting people first, listening, engaging, and making decisions that serve the public, not politics. I'm also deeply passionate about protecting our environment. Growing up in Florida, I've seen firsthand the impacts of flooding, rising costs, and climate change on families. I ran to ensure we have resilient solutions that safeguard our health, our homes, and our future. At the heart of it all, I stepped up to serve so every voice is heard, every family has opportunity, and our communities thrive for generations to come.
She was 2 days from stepping onto a stage and formally declaring herself a candidate for Florida's 20th Congressional District, a seat in the United States House of Representatives. The seat that her friends and colleagues and the party leaders who watched her every day believed she could win. That Rep. Jared Moskowitz stood at her vigil and said plainly Nancy would have won that race. She was on the verge of the biggest moment of her political career. And Stephen Bowen, whose Instagram biography read God, husband, armed, said he couldn't take it anymore. This video is not going to present speculation as fact. What it is going to do is ask the question that the research on intimate partner femicide demands be asked, that the pattern of this case demands be asked, that the 5 words Stephen Bowen gave his uncle demand be asked. Was Nancy Metayer Bowen's success, the rising trajectory of her career, the congressional ambition, the national profile that was building around her, was that success something that the man she was married to could not live with? And if the answer to that question is yes, what does that tell us about the specific danger that faces ambitious, successful women in the private spaces of their own homes? Stay with me. If you are watching this for the first time, subscribe right now. This channel does not look away from the hard questions. Subscribe and stay with me. Before we go anywhere near the question this video was built around, let us establish the facts of the legal case. Stephen Bowen, 40, is charged with first-degree premeditated and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence.
Mr. Bowen, good morning, sir. You're charged with 1 count first-degree premeditated. You're also charged with 1 count tampering with or fabricating physical evidence.
He is held without bond at Broward County Jail. A judge found probable cause and denied bond at his first court appearance on April 2nd, 2026. His attorney invoked his right to remain silent at that hearing. A formal arraignment was expected early the week of April 7th, where the state is expected to present the recorded confession as primary evidence. What the affidavit documents is this? On the night of Tuesday, March 31st, Stephen Bowen ended Nancy's life in their second-floor bedroom using a firearm. He had fashioned a makeshift silencer using a pillow. He used it 3 times. He then went downstairs, and he slept. The next morning, when city officials texted him because Nancy had missed her commission meeting, he told them he did not know where she was, that she was not picking up her phone, that her car was not at home. He drove to his uncle's home, told him what he had done, asked him to hold a gun bag and ammunition. His uncle called 911. By 2:35 p.m. that afternoon, Stephen Bowen was in custody. He invoked his right to an attorney. He has not spoken publicly since. When his uncle asked him why, he said he couldn't take it anymore. The Broward County State Attorney's Office is building the case. The investigation is ongoing. The shotgun used in the incident has been recovered from the location where Stephen Bowen attempted to have his fellow Freemason hide it. This case is moving toward a trial that will eventually answer questions the affidavit has not yet answered. But the question this video is asking, the motive question, is one that researchers, advocates, and domestic violence experts have been thinking about since the morning Nancy's body was found. Drop a comment right now, 1 word. Tell me how you're feeling. I read every single one. He couldn't take it anymore. In the research literature on intimate partner femicide, that phrase or variations of it appears with striking frequency, not as an explanation, as a warning sign that was not recognized in time. Intimate partner femicide researchers at Johns Hopkins, at the CDC, and at institutions across Europe and North America have spent decades studying the specific circumstances that precede the intimate partner killings of women. The findings are remarkably consistent. Intimate partner femicide is almost never truly impulsive. The makeshift silencer in this case alone tells you that. You do not fashion a pillow into a silencer in the middle of a spontaneous confrontation. That is preparation. That is a decision made in advance. That is the physical evidence of a mind that had already decided what it was going to do and was thinking about how to do it quietly.
Is a true definition of sleeping with the enemy. The enemy is right there, y'all. When I tell you this story, I wasn't even going to touch this story because it just, every time I turn on the news and see it, it just brings tears to my eyes.
But here's what the research tells us about the kind of man who reaches that decision. Researchers have identified what they call the loss of control profile. Perpetrators who frame their violence as a response to something their partner was doing that they could no longer tolerate. A woman becoming more independent. A woman gaining status. A woman whose public identity was growing larger than the identity the perpetrator had assigned to her within the relationship. A 2018 peer-reviewed study published in Feminist Criminology, specifically examining the role of coercive control in intimate femicide, found that the majority of intimate partner femicide perpetrators were characterized by a pattern of attempting to control their partner's movements, relationships, careers, and identities. And that the violence escalated frequently to lethal levels at the precise moment when the woman's independence represented a perceived threat to that control. That threat does not have to be separation. It can be promotion. It can be public recognition. It can be the announcement of a congressional campaign. Perceived threats to traditional gender hierarchies, the research uses that phrase, have been identified as a specific fuel for violence in intimate partner relationships. A man who defines himself in relation to his wife's subordination, consciously or not, experiences her ascent as his own diminishment. He couldn't take it anymore. The research asks, take what? And the answer, across case study after case study, is almost always some version of her becoming more than what I needed her to be. To ask the question about motive honestly, you have to look at who Stephen Bowen was. What was publicly visible, what the record contains, his Instagram biography, 3 words, God, husband, armed. The order of those words is worth sitting with. Not God, husband, father. Not God, husband, community. God, husband, armed. The third identity he chose to present to the world. Publicly, voluntarily, in the space where people write the most distilled version of themselves, was his relationship to firearms. His Instagram contained multiple posts of him at ranges, multiple images with weapons. His relationship with God was not incidental. It was part of his public identity. A radiology technician who was also COO of Men of St. Luke, a faith-based nonprofit for men. A man whose professional and social identity was constructed around a very specific set of roles and a very specific set of values about what men are and what they do. His mother told investigators that on Tuesday afternoon, the afternoon before Nancy's life ended, he had called her to say he had experienced a panic attack at work and was going to speak with his wife about it. His mother said she was not aware of any marital issues between the couple. She did not know of any marital issues. That sentence is important because it tells you something about how hidden whatever was happening inside that house was. Not just from Nancy's colleagues and friends, from Stephen's own mother. And here's the detail that is surfaced in community discussion of this case that deserves careful treatment. A woman who identified herself as a former girlfriend of Stephen Bowen wrote on social media that he had been abusive to her during their relationship, mentally and physically. That he had cheated on her, but convinced her it was her fault for working and going to school and not having enough time for him. That he had threatened to end her life on 2 occasions. That she had reported this and nothing was done. These are unverified claims made on social media. They have not been confirmed by law enforcement. They are not part of the public court record. But they describe a specific pattern. A man who resented a woman's professional engagement, who framed her ambition as a failure of loyalty to him, who escalated when he felt he was losing control. If those accounts are accurate, they describe the same man years before Nancy with the same pattern and a different outcome only because that woman got out. To understand what he couldn't take it anymore might mean in the context of this specific marriage. You need to understand the asymmetry between these 2 people. Nancy Metayer Bowen was 38 years old. She had a master's degree from Johns Hopkins. She was the vice mayor of Coral Springs. She was the first Black and Haitian American woman ever elected to the Coral Springs City Commission. She had worked for the Obama administration. She had worked for the Biden campaign. She had worked for the Harris campaign. She was the Florida Democratic Party vice chair of Haitian American voter engagement. She had been recognized by the United Nations for her environmental justice work, and she was 2 days from announcing a run for the United States Congress.
A woman of community, a woman who lived out her values.
She will be deeply missed, by everybody.
I hope that we can continue to shine her light as much as we can, despite the sadness that we feel.
My hope is that we are able to call in Nancy's spirit and soul into ours and take that with us and fight for all marginalized peoples as Nancy would want us to.
I chose integrity, but when I think about integrity, it's rooted in truth, equity, and community, because if you do right by people, you'll be able to advocate for them in that way. Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that we all have a journey here. We all have a mission and a calling, and really be in tune with that. Really find out what you're calling in and really invest in that so you can be a better person and really invest in our communities so we can have a better society.
Stephen Bowen was 40 years old. He was a licensed radiology technician employed at Delray Medical Center. He was the COO of a small faith-based nonprofit for men. His name was unknown to anyone outside his immediate social circle before April 1st, 2026. He had also, court records show, accumulated a history that includes multiple traffic violations, including careless driving causing an accident, cannabis possession, a drug paraphernalia charge, and an American Express debt case in the range of $5,000 to $15,000. These are not character judgments. They are facts in a public record, but they are the facts of a marriage in which one partner was ascending rapidly toward national political prominence, and one partner was not. The research on intimate partner violence consistently identifies a specific risk profile for violence in marriages where there is significant status asymmetry. Not because success makes a woman more deserving of violence, but because the men who are driven by the need to control their partners experience that asymmetry as an existential threat, as the evidence of their own inadequacy, as something that has to be managed, and when it cannot be managed, eliminated. Nancy was about to announce a congressional campaign. If there was any internal dynamic in that marriage related to her success and his struggle with it, that announcement was the moment that made the imbalance impossible to ignore any further. He couldn't take it anymore. The research asks us to take those words seriously, not as an excuse, as a pattern. 3 words. Domestic violence researchers have spent significant time examining the relationship between certain ideological frameworks, particularly certain religious and masculine identity frameworks, and elevated risk of intimate partner violence. The specific ideology that emerges most consistently in the research is what scholars call patriarchal entitlement, the belief held consciously or unconsciously that a man has a fundamental right to authority within his household, that a wife's primary obligation is to him, that her independence, her career, her public identity, to the extent that these things exceed his or compete with his, represent a violation of the natural order he believes should govern their relationship. Men of St. Luke, the nonprofit Stephen Bowen led as COO, describes itself as focused on creating a community for fellowship and discipleship among men who want to live life successfully in the eyes of God. That framing, success in the eyes of God, is not inherently dangerous. Faith communities have been spaces of healing and growth for countless people and families. But the specific framework of masculine identity that some faith-based communities for men promote, the framework that places a man as the divinely ordained head of his household, as the spiritual authority over his wife, as the leader whose leadership is compromised when his wife's public stature exceeds his, that framework, in the hands of a man who is also accumulating resentment and who has documented his identity around being armed, is a framework that researchers recognize as a risk factor for escalating control. God, husband, armed. He placed those 3 identities in that order for a reason. God, his spiritual authority. Husband, his relational authority. Armed, his physical capacity to enforce both. That reading is not certain. It is an interpretation, but is an interpretation that the research on intimate partner femicide supports as worth examining. And it is an interpretation that becomes significantly harder to dismiss when you place it alongside "he couldn't take it anymore," said the morning after he used the armed part of his identity on the husband part of his life. Let us be precise about what we know and what we are asking. We know that Nancy Metayer Bowen was preparing to announce a congressional campaign. We know that her friend and colleague Alfredo Olvera said she was planning to make that announcement on Thursday, April 3rd, that she was excited, that the support was building, that she was going to fight in Congress for the environment, for women's reproductive rights.
Along the lines of Women's History Month, what does that mean to you?
Women's History Month means that we stand on the shoulders of individuals who had to go through things that we didn't have to go through, right? But there's still so much that we have to do. And this month actually highlights still the inequalities that we experience as women. The low pay, the limited access to childcare, not having full bodily autonomy. That is something that we're constantly battling around. And I think that women as a whole have found their voice, and we're continuing to advocate for ourselves, but we have so much more to do.
We know that Stephen Bowen has alleged prior to his arrest on one occasion to have experienced a panic attack on the day he called his mother, Tuesday, March 31st, and told her he was going to speak with his wife about it. We know that that same Tuesday night, after that conversation with his mother, he ended Nancy's life. We do not know what the conversation between Nancy and Stephen Bowen was on Tuesday night. We do not know what was said, what was argued about, what specific trigger preceded what he did. That information, if it exists, is in an investigation and a prosecution that will unfold over months or years. But the timeline is specific. Tuesday, the night before her biggest professional announcement. A man who had already documented his discomfort with his wife's success through his own public-facing choices about identity. A man who had, according to an unverified but detailed social media account, previously framed a former girlfriend's professional ambition as a personal betrayal of him. A man who fashioned a silencer before he fired. Who slept downstairs afterward. Who then tried to dispose of the evidence. Who said when asked why that he couldn't take it anymore. The domestic research community has a name for the specific dynamic where a perpetrator's escalates at precisely the moment a victim is gaining power, independence, or status that the perpetrator cannot control. They call it coercive control escalation, and they have documented across hundreds of cases in multiple countries that the moment a woman's independence peaks is frequently the moment her danger peaks. Nancy Metayer Bowen was at the peak of her independence. She was 2 days from the biggest announcement of her life. And something snapped in the man who had built his public identity around being her husband. This case is not the first time that a woman's professional success has coincided with intimate partner violence. The pattern is documented, it is studied, and it appears with remarkable consistency in cases involving women in public life. A 2020 full analysis of intimate partner femicide cases found that perceived threats to traditional gender hierarchies were a specific factor in a significant subset of cases, and that those most acute in relationships where the woman's public status was growing or was about to grow significantly. Think about the cases that have reached public attention over the years. Women who announced separations and were harmed in the hours and days that followed. Women who were promoted or accepted positions of greater responsibility and whose partners escalated in the period immediately following that advancement. Women who were about to do something, file, announce, accept, leave, and who never got to do it. Nancy Metayer Bowen was about to announce. She never got to. And the community that is now gathering in Orange on City Hall steps, that is planning to honor her at a campus memorial, that is hearing her name spoken on the floors of state legislatures, is also grappling with the specific tragedy of not just what she lost, but what she was on the verge of becoming. Because the danger to a woman is not just the already directed at her, it is the that escalates at precisely the moment she is becoming the most fully herself. Pause right here. Hit the like button for Nancy Metayer Bowen so that this conversation reaches every person who needs to have it. This case demands something specific from every person watching this video. It demands that we stop treating intimate partner femicide as a private tragedy and start treating it as what the research has long established it to be, a systemic, predictable, preventable pattern of behavior that produces entirely foreseeable outcomes when specific risk factors are present and ignored. The risk factors in this case were not invisible. A man who had publicly aligned his identity with firearm. A man with a prior history that, if the social media accounts are accurate, included threats, abuse, and controlling behavior in a prior relationship. A woman whose professional ascent was accelerating. A congressional announcement 2 days away. A panic attack and a conversation with his wife on the night it happened. None of those things individually is a guarantor of violence. But together, in the framework that intimate partner researchers use to assess lethality risk, they constitute a profile that demands to be taken seriously. The danger assessment is a tool developed by Dr. Jacqueline Campbell of Johns Hopkins, the same institution from which Nancy Metayer Bowen earned her master's degree, specifically to identify women at elevated risk of being killed by intimate partners. It asks about firearms in the home. It asks about escalating control. It asks about threats. It asks about major changes in the relationship dynamic. The presence of a firearm in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of an intimate partner homicide by a factor that researchers have consistently measured at 500% or higher. Stephen Bowen's Instagram biography ended with the word armed. His home contained the weapons that were described. Florida does not have a mandatory intimate partner lethality assessment protocol tied to the domestic violence intervention system. There is no mechanism by which the specific constellation of risk factors present in this marriage would have triggered a formal assessment. That gap between what the research knows and what the system requires is a gap that cost Nancy Metayer Bowen her life, and it will cost the next woman her life unless that gap is closed. Share this video right now, because the conversation this case demands is not about one man and one crime. It is about a system that does not recognize a pattern until the pattern has already produced its outcome. Share it. This is the part of the story that Alfredo Olvera told with the specific grief of someone who had known her for nearly a decade. She was going to fight in Congress for control, for the environment, for women's reproductive rights, for mental health, because her own brother Joshua had just died from the accumulated weight of untreated mental illness and the trauma of surviving Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She had built every part of her career on the understanding that systems fail people, and that the solution to systems failing people is not to accept the failure, but to go into the system and change it. She was going to Congress to change it. And the weapon that ended her life, the weapon that her husband had publicly documented his relationship with on social media, that he had carried in his identity alongside God and husband, was the specific category of weapon she intended to legislate about. Rep. Jared Moskowitz said it at the vigil. Debbie and I can't get her there. We will go to the floor of the body she would have been a member of, and we will talk about Nancy. They will speak her name on the House floor. They will stand in the chamber she should have been standing in herself. And if this case produces any change in the systems that fail to protect her, in the lethality assessment protocols, in the firearms access frameworks, in the institutional understanding of what he couldn't take it anymore actually means, then the work Nancy spent her life doing will continue in her name. She believed that a better and more equitable future was possible for all of us. She believed that with every fiber of her being, and she was right. Her name was Nancy Metayer Bowen. She was 38 years old. She was the first Black and Haitian American woman elected to the Coral Springs City Commission. She had a Johns Hopkins master's degree. She had survived disasters and fought for communities and showed up for people every single day with a consistency that the people around her are still trying to fully process now that she is gone. She was 2 days from announcing her run for Congress. Stephen Bowen is in Broward County Jail. No bond. Charged with premeditated, a formal arraignment underway, a prosecution building, and 5 words: he couldn't take it anymore. Sitting in an affidavit that everyone has reported and nobody has fully examined. This video has tried to examine them, not to excuse them, not to explain them in a way that distributes blame toward Nancy or toward the ambition she had every right to pursue, but to name the pattern, to connect it to the research, to say clearly what the evidence suggests and what the research confirms, that women who are ascending are in specific danger from the men in their lives who experience that ascent as a loss of control. And to say just as clearly, the answer is not for women to stop ascending. The answer is for systems to take the warning signs seriously before the silencer is fashioned and is loaded and the phone goes unanswered on a Wednesday morning. Say her name. Nancy Metayer Bowen. She was going to Congress to fight for control. She should still be going. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it everywhere, leave Nancy's name in the comments. Florida Domestic Hotline 800-500-1119. If you are a woman in a relationship where your partner's words and behaviors suggest he cannot tolerate your success, that is a warning sign. Please reach out. for Nancy because she deserved to win that race. I will see you in the next one.